At what point in the dating process would you want to know that a man is wounded or non-committal? Would it be, after you're in a fully committed relationship, or excuse me, after you're in a relationship with them? Would you want to learn it in the first 30 days? Would you want to learn about it before sex? Would you want to learn about it on the first date? Or would you want to even learn about it before the first date? When do you want to figure out when someone is non-committal or wounded? Well, personally, I would rather not waste my time going out with someone who isn't capable of fully commit. And yet, this is a challenge for most of us. So, with that said, let's dive into this question because I want to share with you quickly a commercial I saw where there were three women sitting at a table and they were talking about this one woman's date with a man. And all the women were going, wow, he was tall, he was handsome, he was successful, all these qualities about him that seemed great. And the woman who went on the date kind of shrugged it off. And they go, what's the issue? And she says, he lost me when he said he doesn't do therapy. And I thought that was kind of an interesting commentary. I suspect that's quite a bit for the millennials these days. But what does that say about a person who actually does inner work? Whether it's personal development, whether it's self-help, whether it's spiritual work, whether it's therapy. When someone is actually working on their wounds, the things that have wounded them, they make a better partner. So this video coming out this morning was really predicated based on a question that came up in one of my live streams a few days ago, where a woman shared the story of a man she was on a first date with. And during the first date, he asked, who filed for divorce? Who filed for divorce? Now, she was very off-put by the question. And I can understand why people might think that. It might be too personal. It might be too intimate of a question. I can see how that's, or it's too much for a first date. See, that's the other thing. It's too much for a first date. But if someone is wounded, if someone is unable to commit, wouldn't you rather know that before a second date? Wouldn't you rather know that before you kissed? Wouldn't you rather know that before you're physically intimate with someone? I would think you'd want to know these things. So why would a question like that reveal woundedness and non-committal? Well, that's a good question. Let's explore that for a second. And I'll give you a few more questions to think about in the early stages of getting to know someone. Okay. So first off, how someone reacts to that question is a sign of where they're at. Because if a person is fully capable of let me reframe that. If a man or woman truly wants a committed relationship with someone, then all questions are important, because dating is not about let's just have fun. It's all about fun. Let's just have fun. Dating is a vetting process to decide if you want to explore a deeper relationship with someone. That's what dating is. It's much like an interview process. And so think about this. If you're about to, you're a hospital and you're about to hire a doctor, okay? And you don't know where they went to school. You don't know what hospitals they work at. You know little or you know nothing about their credentials. Would you hire someone you know nothing about their credentials? I suspect not. So it's the same with dating. Why invest time with someone that you don't know their credentials? Now, I get it. This is a challenge in our dating marketplace because we're meeting total strangers. See, unlike the past, when you met somebody in your town, your work environment, your school environment, you probably had a chance to get to know someone before you engaged in the connection of dating. But today it's total strangers. So I can understand why people might not want to go deep in the early stages, because dating predominantly, I want you to think about this for a second. Really think about your experiences and tell me if you can relate to this. You focus mostly on attraction and chemistry. You know very little about the person. You begin engaging in a physical relationship without ever knowing their emotional well-being. And how often does someone come across, that you come across with all the attraction, the energy, the chemistry, only to find out that they're non-committal later on down the road. And there are actually some clues that are there in the early stages that might give you some pause. And that's what I'm really leaning about. So Excuse me for slurping. The coffee is hot. So coming back to this, asking the question of who filed for divorce, and I'm really fixated on this one. You know, if you think about it, it's public record. So somebody could have gotten your first and last name, checked out your public records before the first date. Okay. I mean, to have some attitude about the question, what really would fascinate me with this question is, how do they respond to the question? Is there a sense of anger? Is there a sense of bitterness? Is there a sense of betrayal? What is behind the answer to that question reveals a mountain of information. See, you think about it, just like the doctor I shared, you want to find out about their past experience, their education, their past experiences. It's the same in dating, mating, and relating. Our past relationships are a window into how they operate in relationship, Think about this for a second. So a lot of people say, I don't want to talk about my past, or I even had someone write, the past is gone, focus on the present. But the past is a volume of information that gives you insight into how someone operates. So one of the most important questions to ask, whether you do it before you meet someone, whether you do it on the first date, but certainly before you get involved with some, okay, let me backtrack. Let's go back to a first date for a second. If you like this guy, if you like this person you're meeting, it's a first date, you like them, and you sense they like you, that is when you should be asking all the tough questions. I know this goes against all the other dating advice, but if all the other dating advice was so good, then why is the dating marketplace so miserable? Okay. I'm here to offer a different way to look at things. Just like that commercial where the woman asked about therapy, we have to recognize that most human beings are wounded. It's just a matter of degrees. And are those wounds going to preclude them for entering into a fully committed relationship? That's a really tough question. This is why asking about past relationships and really pay attention to how they answer these questions. Are they still charged? Are they still, are they even a bit bitter? Are they a bit jaded? Are they a bit, hurt, wounded, betrayed? If they're feeling all of that, then it's possible they may not be able to fully commit. Now, the other thing I've talked about is in the past, I've talked about childhood wounds and traumas that stems from someone's upbringing or their parental, both their outside upbringing and their parental upbringing. Now, most humans haven't had real trauma such as physical abuse or emotional abuse. And now to some degree but at the reality is this comes at degrees. My mother and father I had what I would say a garden variety upbringing, but my father beat the crap out of me growing up. My mother was emotionally despondent. My mother would emotionally abandon us. And I had what I called a garden variety upbringing. And I still had significant trauma growing up. We can look, by the way, those that have had real deep wounds, whether were real psychological, physical wounds. Yeah, we think about that type of childhood wound, but what about the garden variety childhood wounds? And this affects us as adults. It is naive to think otherwise. And so this is where it really begs the question. And by the way, coming back to past relationships, this is really critically important because I want to emphasize this. With divorced people, you have on average of at least 1, 2, or 3 significant relationships before you're dating them. And how those relationships unraveled will give you a sense if this person is capable of actually committing to you. So coming back to the question, again, I'm fixated on this question. Tomorrow my video is going to talk about it as well. I'm fixated on this, who filed for divorce. I've said this earlier, women typically do the filing. And so when you ask a man that question, how he responds energetically will give you some insight into, is he really ready for a significant relationship. I got an email this morning. I want to share this with everyone. A woman wrote me and said, Jonathan, she's talking about a man she dated briefly. She goes, we talked for a couple weeks for hours. He was getting out of a 13-year relationship, but didn't expect to connect and open up to me. He wanted to be friends regardless if we had sex. A month later, we hooked up. He couldn't keep it up, blamed me, told me things changed for him, and blew me off. I'm going to tell you the red flag there. He just got out of a 13-year relationship. Someone that's gotten out of a 13-year relationship, if they have done little or no work to heal the cause, it's almost 99% of the time it's their fault. It's their fault. So they don't look at, and by the way, when they're pointing the finger at who's at fault, they're not taking ownership of me. By the way, let me just share something with you. Going through a breakup sucks. It hurts, no matter who was the initiator. It sucks for both sides. And there needs to be a little bit of time to heal. And my suspicion is these hours of conversation they had were either very surface conversations, or maybe he was throwing his ex relationship under the bus. And the woman is thinking to herself, I'm not like his ex relationship. I will be his heroine. This is what a lot of you do. People bond oftentimes through their experiences. And this is a different form of trauma bonding. You're bonding through the traumas you've had in your life, but that's not really getting to know someone. All you're doing is getting a recap of their past. Now, this is critically important to get a recap of the past. I'm not saying that, but actually going deeper. How did you heal from this experience? And my suspicion is this person had no healing. And the minute they had sex, whatever reason, he wasn't able to, get it up, and he certainly wanted to blame it. Obviously not a very evolved person and not a very evolved relationship. So I want to emphasize this. What's the purpose of dating? The purpose of dating is a getting to know you dynamic. And today, it's all based on attraction and entertainment. Attraction and entertainment. Attraction and entertainment. Are two people physically attracted to one another, and then they entertain each other, going out to dinners, going out to movies, going out and doing entertaining things. And they have oftentimes very surface conversations, and this happens for the first few weeks or months. And then they use their smartphones. Text morning. Good morning, beautiful. Good morning, handsome. How's your day going? Did you have a good day? Hey, at the end of the day, thinking of you. Good night, sweetheart. A lot of surface conversations happens with text messaging, or God forbid people get into these incessant communications via their smartphones. They have serious dialogue with one another. And let me just be clear, folks, I really want to emphasize this. Humans were not designed to communicate with our thumbs. We are designed to communicate with our words, our facial features, our hands, our pheromones, our 3D. 90% of communication is nonverbal. It is done in the presence of someone. So I need you to understand that a lot of this communication the two of you having aren't really getting to know one another. This is why in my private coaching, I just want to share really quickly. I had an email from a client who just finished my boot camp. This is a private one-on-one coaching with me. If you want some support, check out the link to schedule a free discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. She wrote me and she said, Jonathan, I learned to go into the online dating process with confidence. I learned to love myself, be myself, and value myself because I'm worth it. I learned what I'm looking for in a partner. I've even come up with the most important qualities and questions to ask in the early stages. I've learned to spot the red flags. I learned how to interview a potential partner, asking questions without it being an interrogation. I learned that it's okay to ask God to bring about the right man at the right time for me, and I believe it. And I learned that I have enough worth that I don't have to settle for less than the qualities I want. If I don't meet a guy right away, I know that I'm okay being by myself for right now. Folks, Dating is a vetting process. This means it's imperative to find out as many questions about a person, the deeper questions, sooner rather than later. Because as I started this broadcast, I said, when are you going to want to know a man is non-committal or wounded? Or worse, toxic or narcissistic? Think about this. Believe it or not, toxic, narcissistic people actually give out significant clues in the early stages as we don't listen. Because we're so caught up in the chemistry and not really paying attention to shared values, lifestyles that are blendable, and more importantly, their emotional maturity and their relationship skills. Since we hyper focus, and I'm guilty of this, folks, I am not here to suggest that I'm above all this. I've made mistakes too. That's why it's called, I had a quote once that said, you know why it's called dating? Because there was no other word for revealing your childhood wounds, uncovering your triggers, abandoning your boundaries, lowering your standards, settling. There was no other word for it. So they called it dating. And I'm sorry, I'm laughing. See, sovereignty means owning your worth right off the bat. Sovereignty means not giving your power away to another human being. Sovereignty means not getting carried away by lust or limerence. Sovereignty means if you get triggered, it's incumbent upon you to navigate those experiences and not expect someone else to be different for you not to get triggered. And the list goes on. And that's what dating is. So if you're offended by a really, unusual question, then I invite you to ask, why does that trigger me? Why does that bother me? Because it's public record, by the way, to know who filed for divorce. So it's out there for everybody to see. Okay. So really ask yourself, why would that bother you? But more importantly, if you did ask, and by the way, you're answering the question, really pay attention to that answer. Pay attention to the questions of what was your childhood like? What were your parents like? And most importantly, getting an autopsy of their past relationships. Because if you're going to go get a job, if you're going to try to get a really good job, you'd want to know as much about this person before you hire them. And even that 90-day probationary period, because here's what happens in those first 90 days, folks, we can get very attached to someone very quickly. That is a very common thing. Getting attached to a person that's wounded and non-committal is heartbreaking in many cases. And this is why I'm such an advocate for doing a deeper dive sooner rather than later. And if you want support with that, that's what I do my coaching for. I teach you the questions to ask based on your personality. So you can do this in a very non-interrogating way, even though I say you should interrogate everyone, and I mean that tongue in cheek, but doing it in a very non-interrogating way. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating? Please let me know. Hey, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Post a comment below. If you appreciated this content, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you do, hit that notification bell when you could be notified of new videos and live streams as well. All right, this will be our time to take questions. Those of you know my format, if you have a question, write the word question in the chat box. Write the word question and post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. He's my son who passed away. That's a picture of him right there in the Obey shirt. In his honor, I donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and Seeds of Love, just to name a few. So purchase a super sticker, super chat. Hey, we'd like to collect $50 today. So I'd really appreciate those donations, okay? All right. Or you can get on the hot seat. There's a link right here. If you want to interact with me live, jump on the hot seat and let's have a conversation, okay? That would be fun as well. All right, let's see what kind of questions we have in the inbox so far. Oh, Ani says, this is a really good one. She says, for some people, I believe, Commitment means marriage. For some others, it just means go with the flow long term. That's a great point. What does commitment mean to you? What does that mean to you? I think this is a really important question. What does a relationship look like for you? I continually see people engaging in long distance dating where they're not getting the significant requisite time to get to know one another. It's all done on the smartphone. So I watched a video some months back where Jay Shetty, and he's got that podcast called, what's the name of Jay Shetty's podcast? It's the #1 rated podcast, okay? In his book, he talks about, I believe, and if I got this right, it takes about 40 hours of face-to-face time just to begin to develop a friendship with someone. You need to spend about that much time. I believe he said something like that. Now, I've always said it takes about 100 hours of face-to-face time just to build the first layer of trust, okay? And Jay Shetty goes on to say it takes about 200 hours of face-to-face time to build a friendship with someone, a good friendship with someone. And, doing social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends. So it occurs to me that today we believe that talking on the phone is really building trust with someone. Now, there is some passing of information that happens on the phone, but it is through the doing of experiences that you get to evaluate how someone treats waiters, how they treat other people, how they treat you in person. Are they dismissive of you? Because most humans today spend more time talking on the phone, talking about their wounds. They're basically, a lot of people are talking about their past relationship from a very wounded place, and they're bonding with each other from a very wounded place. I said trauma-based earlier, but I want to say they're bonding in it from a very wounded place. And no wonder people who are wounded are oftentimes have a very difficult time fully committing. Okay, so I'm just drawing your attention to that. All right. Kim says, is it a red flag if someone is in their mid-40s and never married? Great question. Okay. So let's differentiate between a red flag and a deal breaker. If it is a deal breaker for you that someone's never married, then it's a deal breaker. It's not a red flag. Okay. So red flag means ask more questions. It means, is there something up? And the answer is yes and no. It could mean that he just hadn't met the right person at this point that was worth committing to. And to these days, that's going to be very common. We're going to see the millennials. We're going to see a significant percentage of millennials when they start hitting 40, 45, 50, we're going to see a huge population of never married. In fact, that's one of the fastest growing demographics for businesses are actually focused. I think it's by 2035. They're going to say that 60% of women or more are going to be never married. By that, 40-plus-year-old women are going to be never married. That's an interesting fact. Okay, so we're talking about women. It's going to be there, but as far as a man, what you want to do is do an autopsy of his past relationships and do an autopsy of his childhood, to get a sense of what might be going on here. That's what deeper questions means. But Jonathan, every other dating coach tells me not to do that. I need to go with the flow. I need to let the man lead the relationship. And I just trust, I just sit in my feminine energy. I just lean back in my feminine energy and just trust the masculine, the divine masculine to lead the process. Do you realize you're giving the job most likely to a wounded human being? We have a population of men over 40 that are rather clueless as to the direction they have in their own life other than their professional direction. A significant percentage of men have no clue. Let's think about it. If they're divorced, do you know a significant percentage of men are less likely to want to get married unless they have a codependent type of personality, because they possibly felt like they got burned in their last relationship. So coming back to the non-married guy, who's a better bet? The guy who is married and divorced and less likely to get married, or the person who's never been married, but he may not just met the right person? These are questions to ask oneself. That's my opinion anyway. All right. Thank you so much for that question. All right. Bump, 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 bump. Janine, J9. Thanks for all your great info. Recently got back into dating, 26 years marriage. Thank you so much. That wasn't a question though, but thank you for sharing that. Megan says, if you meet someone who aligns in values and lifestyles, but you don't feel chemistry, is that relationship worth pursuing? You know, I believe we have a capacity to love. If you meet a good person, you have the capacity to love them. And it's quite possible that physical intimacy could shift that. Okay. I'm saying it's quite possible. I think it's harder to find a person with lifestyle matching and values. And I think it might be worth giving it a shot. Now, unless you're repulsed by this person, unless they have, they're missing their front teeth and got a beer gut the size of Texas, if you're not repulsed, I have found that nearly 1/3 of women who are in happy relationships have said to me, and I quote, "I wasn't attracted to my guy on the first, second, or third date. Something changed." So Megan, you might want to give a good man a little bit more, look-see. All right, good question. Sunshine says, can you have some videos on red flags to watch for and how to know difference between love bombing and someone who's infatuated or limerence? How to spot the guy that's a player? Actually, I do have several videos. You can go back to my past library. I have videos on red flags. I got videos on love bombing, but let's address that really quickly. The love bomber is trying to convince you to like them. Okay, they're trying to convince you to like them, or they're trying to get you in get you in bed. They are focused on the sex piece and they're not patient. Okay. I have certainly been infatuated with women. I've lusted for women, and I've tried to get them in bed on the first date or second date. So I've been there. But when a man genuinely likes a woman and he's even enthusiastic, he's not driven by his penis. He's not trying to get you in bed. If he's trying to get you in bed, that's the red flag, or that should be the deal breaker. If he's enthusiastic, be grateful for the enthusiasm. Okay, see the difference? I hope that helps, Sunshine. Thank you so much. Who wants to get in the hot seat? Come on, don't be bashful. All right. G9 comes back and says, question finished. Do people go for STD tests before having sex now? I did with my ex before we had sex. Yeah, I've had that done. I've had a woman request that. I think actually my son was talking to me about that as well. Certainly for his demographic, given that, by the way, when I was growing up, when I met my ex-wife, I mean, it was like, I don't think we had sex for like a month of dating before we had sex. Used to be a totally different ball game back in that day. I think back then she wasn't on birth control when we met. So that was part of the reason for it. And there was no day after pill. So, and listen, I'm a guy. Guys don't like wearing condoms. I know we should, but we don't like it. It affects our chi, that sort of thing. So, so coming back to STD tests, the reality is a lot of people have had a lot of sex with a lot of other people. I think it's very valid to talk about that and have a conversation and possibly both get STD tests. And the beauty of that is it kind of prolongs the sex piece so you can get to know each other more. So I think that's a great question and a good thing to do. All right, Sunshine comes in. When does no one address the issue of gay guys using women to hide they're gay? I have no issue with gays, but it's horrifying. They marry and hide. How to spot before it? You know what? I am not qualified to answer that question. I wouldn't know how to. I've never dealt with that. I do believe it's probably a small population of men, and this is a really deep question that would require a lot of going through the nooks and crannies of that. My question is, why does that concern you? That would be my question. Why does that concern you? If you're holding in your consciousness this thought, then every man you're looking at you're going to look at that from a suspicious place. And I'm here to invite everyone to have what's called beginner's mind in the dating process, with a bit of, higher wisdom along the way. But when it comes to the other person, don't crucify them before you ever meet them, is all. All right, Beach to Snow Girl is in the house. Big hugs to you. Number one question, ask them about their mom, not the relationship now, but what she did to him as a kid. If she left him when he was young, regardless of why, and especially for a man to no go. Great point. So I once had a client ask a man about his childhood and his mother. And he said, I grew up in Israel. And Israel, you do military service. And there's, some emotional challenges that may come with that. But more importantly, he said, my mother was a despicable human being. I thought, wow, that's a really raw thing to say about your mother. And so when she asked, wow, that must have been tough on you, how did you heal from that? And he said, healing? What's healing? So she knew right off the bat, this person probably, and if you looked at his past relationship experience, he was a, short-lived experience, and he had nothing but complaints about every woman in his life. Ding, 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 ding. This goes beyond red flag. This should be a warning sign in your face. Okay. So Beach Girl, I think that's a good point you bring up. So thanks so much. Heidi is in the house, and she says, can a non-committal man through time change to commitment? Yeah, that is absolutely possible. I do believe someone, and this is tricky, men who have said, I'm not looking for a serious relationship and not get married, they oftentimes change their tune. Now, I suspect that if it were, here's the thing. If someone has done the work to heal childhood wounds and adult traumas, if they've done somatic therapy, if they've done some, somatic therapy is body work. And I'm a big advocate for mind, body, spirit, and emotion work. Mind, body, spirit, emotional work to get to a place of knowing you want to be a partner to someone. Okay. There are plenty of people that have done no work. They go into the process against the idea of commitment, and then they change their mind. But my suspicion is, given that 65 to 75% of second marriages fail, this means that, by the way, this means that 60, 70, 80, 90% of relationships in midlife fail too. Okay. It's possible that he might be committed to someone, but they're not going to have a healthy relationship with one another. So I'd rather go deeper than just that. Okay. Dolly is in the house, and she said, what questions must I ask to get an honest answer about being divorced or not? The man I just dated lied, and it wasn't in the report, ran on him. Backup sucks going through. It's hard. People lie. People show up as the ambassador of their best selves in the early stages. It takes about 3 months to really start to see the mask come off. Most people are good people. They're just wounded. Most people don't lie, but some do. It's hard to, unless you're a trained, professional. Think about like profilers for the FBI. They are trained to spot detectives, and detectives also and at police stations. They're trained to spot liars. The average person isn't trained. Even the best questions that I teach clients it's not foolproof, but it's better than doing nothing. So coming back to childhood and past relationships would be the questions, and their desire for commitment. That would be my intent. Do men have red flag deal breakers? Absolutely. I think men particularly are paying attention if they're possibly a gold digger or entitled. They're paying attention if they have emotional outbreaks. Men worry about women being crazy. That's their definition. But even Johnny Depp couldn't have spotted that until you were in a relationship with someone. And by the way, he was no picnic either. So, but yeah, most men's centers around, are they potentially gold diggers? Are they using them? Are they crazy? Those are the top things that men probably focus on for the most part. Also, are they, but they're also a deal breaker. Is she kind? I had one woman, God, I'm embarrassed to share this with me, but she just acted entitled. She expected me to pull her chair out. She expected me to open the car door. And I'm that type of person that does that anyway. But the energy gave off. I could feel there was an expectation instead of allowing it from me to come from a place of generosity. And because of that, she had walls up. She had walls up, and I could feel it energetically. And we never got past a second date because I could feel that energy. So those are just a couple things that come to mind. All right, let's keep going. Coming back to number one correlation to a man that has huge wounds, leaving him for a man is the worst. I don't get that. Okay. Priya's in the house, and she says, dated a guy meeting daily. His wounded mom passed away during COVID. Oh. And divorced during the same time. Not open to commitment, but wants to meet daily. Sure. Now, by the way, that wasn't a question, but folks, if you're going to ask a question, don't make a statement. So men desire female energy. We like the company of women because we can be a little bit more emotionally open to a woman than we would our male friends. So men gravitate. This is why I say to you frequently, a lot of you are experiencing men that just want to be with you as their pseudo therapist. And he wants to talk to you, even though he's not ready for commitment, because having female energy feels good. It serves a need. The question is, what need does it serve you? Do you want, folks, we don't have time to fuck around. You do not have the time to waste with non-committal wounded people. It is better to write them off soon. Before you ever go on a date with someone, find out these deeper questions. All right. I think you get the gist of where I'm going. A married man is flirting with me. I'm tempted, but what are the pitfalls, or should do I have to even really answer that question? So it occurs to me that a woman who gravitates towards a married man, it's because I'm going to be blunt, light seeker. That means there's something lacking in you. Okay. Which means you're appreciating the validation. You're appreciating the time. But just imagine this. How would you feel? How would you feel if the wife came to you and said, "Why are you talking to my husband?" How would you feel about that? How would you feel if you're in a relationship with a man and he's doing the same thing? There needs to, by the way, ladies, there's no honor amongst you ladies. There's no honor amongst men either. Where's the honor of saying, you know what? Fuck him. Out of respect for her, I won't do this. Because we're selfish human beings. Human beings are rather selfish. I want my needs being met. This serves a need for you, but it's not going to, but believe me, you're going to be devastated if you go down it. So yeah, walk away. I'm sorry. Does anyone else think the same as me? I think that's mean. I think that's, I'm going to say that's mean to do it to the other woman. And then what does that say about your character? What does that say about your integrity? I'm being really harsh here because some of you really need a smack upside the head. I'm a tough love coach. I'm not you know what? I know your little kid just wants to be validated. And I know your little kid wants to be, wants to feel significant, and it's okay to feel that way. Okay. Fuck that shit. It's mean to her. If you know it, it's mean and it's a reflection. And I really want everyone to really reflect on their character. And believe me, I butt up against my integrity every day, my unhealthy ego and my integrity butt heads every day. But sometimes, and I, by the way, and I call people to put me in my place. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Peg. Is it wrong to ask a guy who's divorced what went wrong or perhaps his part in it? No, this is the whole point of this. This whole video is about asking the deeper questions. No, it is not wrong. Everybody remember this quote. Speak your truth. Just do it in a kind way. And if it's sincere and from the heart, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. You can't. All right. Heidi's in the house and she says, are men more monogamous when they have unprotected sex with you? That's a, I don't know. You know what? I don't know whether the condom makes it any more, maybe 0.1% more. I really can't. I wouldn't know the answer to that one. But thanks for asking it. I appreciate it. Who wants to be on the hot seat? Come on, beach to snow girl. Get on the hot seat. Right there. No integrity. Lindsay wants to say lacking morals, disgusting. Mary wants to agree with me. Thank you so much. Just remember, karma is real. Honey wants to remind you, let's not advocate being a home wrecker. Harlow wants to tell us that I said to a man who wanted to meet for sex with me that I don't want to be with someone's husband. That is the ultimate betrayal, and I'm worth way more than that. Yes, I'm being harsh on the person, but I'm going to say you're worth more. Stand in your power. But you needed a wake-up call too. Kim wants to say, so if the person does not answer these questions, that's your sign to leave them alone? Well, here's what I would do. I wouldn't kiss them and I wouldn't have sex with them until I found out as much as possible about their past relationships. That's my invitation for you. Don't let the penis go inside the vagina. Okay, let's keep going here. Okay, one of our Facebook members has jumped in. By the way, check out my group in the link below to Midlife Love Mastery. This is a private group where you can have direct access to me on a regular basis, okay, through a Facebook page and a once-a-month call. So I'm going to answer this question. If he leaves his wife, will he heal up, dump you? You're going to be fooled. Oh, yeah, exactly. All right, Samantha's in the house.
Hi, Jonathan. Good morning.
Hey there. You got a lot of red hair.
I have a lot of red hair. So if anyone's wondering, Jonathan helped me get out of a relationship that was going to implode at some point, and I really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So that it definitely, tough love works, in my opinion. That's just how it goes.
So is it okay if I expand upon this for a little bit for everyone?
No, go right ahead, because I actually did have one final question for you that I wasn't clear about, that I'd like some clarification on.
Okay. So everyone, I just want to share with, and again, I've got your permission, so I want to be clear.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. There's nothing.
So
nothing.
Samantha came to me for what I call an unpacking session. What that means is she was in a relationship with a man for about 5 weeks. 5 or 6 weeks, and she wanted some perspective on it. And I call this a get inside a guy's head unpacking session. Oh, we lost her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm here. Okay, that's okay. So what we identified was this was a relationship that had long distance involved. It was 3.5 hour drive. He was barely divorced. I mean, literally barely divorced. And his spouse betrayed him. And also, what was the other thing? So those were like the three main things we covered. Now, in this conversation, I drew attention to the fact that most, and oh, by the way, in their communication, he even openly admitted that she was farther along in this process than he was. So he literally admitted, I'm just not that far along in the process. I don't know what I want. So during this conversation, we recognized that someone that just got out of a marriage literally seconds ago probably needs time to do some inner healing work to really integrate himself. This is where men go out and date habitually. They need a couple transition relationships, and I thought that it wouldn't be in her best interest to enter into that. In addition, he felt betrayed by his ex-spouse. So in that betrayal, there's a deep wound there that needs some real healing. For men, it can feel very shameful to be betrayed. And then you have the distance. And the fact of the matter is it's different. You know, they have two separate lives 3.5 hours away, and it would take at least a minimum of 5, 6, 7, or 8 years before there can ever be integration. And men, certainly in the hunt stage, will drive 3.5 hours to get laid, but after a while it's going to wear on us. And usually, and another piece of this puzzle is that men aren't designed to bond via the telephone. We do it temporarily, but after a while, talking on the phone can just be laborious. It can be draining. It could just be, unfulfilling. And that's usually what happens with men. They stop communicating because that's what telephone communication feels like. So I'm bringing this up, and thank you, Samantha, for allowing us to do this, is that she also has an anxious attachment style. And because of that anxious attachment style, this was triggering her, this dynamic. So there's a reason why this happened for her, and it's really the recognition to heal the anxious wound within her. So with that said, thank you for allowing me to share that with everyone. I hope people got value in that share.
Oh, good. It's been cutting out quite a bit. I'm actually in a hotel room right now, so it's cutting out. But
okay, say your question really quickly then.
Okay. So my question was, you had said, I had told him that all I really wanted was 2 texts a day, and that wasn't, and he didn't do that. And I said, there's 2 reasons: he's either playing games or he can't do that. And regardless, it didn't matter; it wasn't enough. And you said he wasn't playing games; he couldn't do it, and I didn't quite understand why that was so hard for him to do, or what that was, to not be able to even connect that way in that.
Yeah. So irony was the video I did 2 days ago. I actually addressed this, but so one is what you're making okay. So here you're making a request. Can you talk to me morning and night kind of thing? Right. First off, that comes across as a demand. Okay. It's like, you're telling me what to do. Yeah. I need you to do this. It would make me happy if you did this. Now, if you said, listen, I have a need for safety. I have a need for validation. I have a need for connection.
And I did. I mean, that's what I said.
No, I know that. Yeah. But I'm saying, but when you come at from a place of a need, then it really, it triggers the person to really go, am I this person's provider, protector, hero in that moment? Okay. But if a person is wounded, they can't do your heroic things. He has a separate life 3.5 hours away. He's still dealing with the emotional effects of a divorce. He has young children in his life. And he has his professional life. So all of that, amasses a significant amount of brain time for him, emotionally and mentally, if you will. Okay. And because even though there was this physical connection between the two of you really didn't build the deeper friendship with one another. In other words, this is where a lot of relationships lack that deeper friendship that happens through social activities, hobbies, mutual interest with one another when you're integrating into each other's lives, not via the telephone. So the telephone ends up being very draining to feel the responsibility, because not enough trust was built, not enough friendship was built. You look forward to calling up your friend, right? You go, God, I want to let my friend know how I'm doing. But I suspect that even though you guys got caught up in the physical end of it and some, emotional end, no true friendship was really built during that 5 to 6 week period.
Okay.
So he was incapable of doing it for those reasons.
So even, I mean, just straight up, good morning, good night, nice, thinking about you. It's too much. Is that what you're
Well, it's
saying?
not too much. It's just, I mean, it's like he doesn't need it. So why do you need it? That's one way of looking at it. I don't need to do that.
Okay.
So why do you need that from me? And possibly it feels like there's an anxious attachment going on and you need this to feel good. But I really am trying to say it wasn't about the good morning and good evening text. What was missing in this dynamic was real trust and friendship. That's what was missing.
Okay.
And folks, I'm here to say, you know, when you do long distance, it's a 99% certainty sex will happen on the first meeting. So that there wasn't, so that after that, you know, it's harder to build friendship. It's easier to build friendship before sex. It's much harder because then the relationship is driven by the sexual, physical piece and not the real deeper emotional piece.
Right. Right.
So just remember, it wasn't about the text messaging. It wasn't, and this isn't about whether he was just not that into you. I am sure that he likes you and has some care for you. It just, there wasn't enough time to build it takes time to build trust with another human being. And we build trust through experiences versus, going out to dinner and getting together and having sex. Okay. We don't build trust that way. We build trust through experiences.
Yeah. I mean, we did have experiences, but I hear what you're saying. We did have,
Well, but you did. Okay. Yeah, you did. I mean, I know you went out and did stuff, but it's the integration into each other's lives. And I know you did some of that. I get that, and quite frankly, his main thing was divorced, nanosecond ago, betrayed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 3.5 hours difference. You had 3 major things going against you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. The first two is the first two is the first two is
the distance. No. Don't underestimate the distance. It's hard to have regular contact with someone when there's difference. And what happens is your contact is in what's called a bubble. So you get together in a little bubble, okay? But it's not the real world. It's a little bit of a bubble. Now, I know you guys did some stuff with children and whatnot, but for the most part, it's like a mini vacation. That's the thing. For him, this is a mini vacation. We get to hang out together, but it's not in real integration.
Okay.
And by the way, I want you, Honey Lou said, Samantha, you deserve the best man. You will invest 100% for you.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. I so appreciate that. I really do. It's just so hard because I live somewhere that's so distant from everybody. Like right now I'm up in Reno and I've been on, I look at Bumble and there's 50 guys that are from Reno that have swiped right. Whereas like when I'm back home and it's 3 hours away, it's just, I'm just like, so what? I don't even know what to do. I don't even know.
I get it. So let's talk. All right. So for everyone's benefit, let's talk about this. So I recognize that you live in a town where it's less than 10,000 people or something like that, or whatever the number is. First off, all it takes is one man. Okay.
I know.
And just keep in mind, 80% of single people are not on the, okay. Wait, is it that? 2/3 of singles are not on the dating apps, or your guy might be on Match.com, or he might be on OkCupid, or he might be on this side. He might not be on Bumble. Okay. So when you're using one spoke for all of your decision making, you're limiting yourself. So I'm here to say, put yourself on every app. Now, this is going to require a lot of effort and time. Okay. Unless you physically put yourself out I want you to think about this, Samantha. How can a man ask you out if he doesn't see who you are? And so, yes, we have some people on Bumble and some people on Match and some people this. It's going to require being seen first and foremost. Have you put the best representation of yourself on these apps or in your real life? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be candid with you. I review hundreds of dating profiles every week. 99% of them are poorly done. And you're statistically speaking, you're in that. Everybody thinks they have a great profile. They don't. It's really poorly done. Okay. So first, putting the best representation of yourself. Okay. Now, by the way, men, 99% are poorly done. So and we've, the problem with swiping too. So I want to be, everyone knows publicly that my relationship with Marie ended. And I briefly went on the dating apps. It was a knee jerk reaction. And it was coming from a very wounded place. I have to own that piece. And after swiping a while, I was really, repulsed by it. I wasn't repulsed by the people.
Right.
I was repulsed at how this made me feel. I was repulsed at marginalizing a person. I was repulsed by the judgments I had. I was repulsed at myself.
Right.
So swipe dating has bastardized the meeting process. I'm a big proponent of people doing Match.com. It has a greater essay involved. There's more information. But coming back to, and do multiple sites. But at the end of the day, it's also being an environment of asking people, who do you know that lives here that would be worth meeting? Start using your tentacles as much as you can to connect with people that live in your hometown, because you're going to be in your hometown for at least another 5 or 6 years.
Right.
Or just wait to date. That's the other thing. Wait to meet somebody until you can move into a town where, by the way, people that live in Los Angeles complain there's no good people in Los Angeles. People in New York complain there's no good people. Everybody complains about where they live. What I'm inviting you to do is to have an abundance mentality. God, universe, spirit. I invite in a juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship where we have amazing chemistry with one another, and our banter and communication go on for hours and hours at a time. And we have the capacity to resolve conflicts and differences with ease, and our lifestyles are blendable with one another. And we share the same values, and we build the deep roots of trust through social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, integrating into each other's lives. God, universe, spirit, I invite that in. A little prayer for you. Start praying on it. Start setting the intention.
Should I not
that it's
even
just
go on a
around
date?
the corner. Huh?
Well,
What?
so this is my question. I actually have a date lined up for tonight in Reno.
Okay.
Should I not even go?
Well,
just he lives here.
so-
Just should I not even bother?
I suspect that you're going to go because it's good to have some male energy and some male company. The question becomes, what if you're attracted to this person? You're attached to them, and then he starts pursuing you, and you're going to do this dance all over again. The hardest thing to do is to say no. Well, let me reframe that. Our little wounded kid ego wants to feel wanted. So you have this swipe where you both, wanting one another, and it feels good to feel wanted in that particular case. Okay. And in that, though, you have to be, I'm here to advocate for being pragmatic. How realistic can you have a relationship with someone? Have you found out why his divorce, what caused his last relationship to end? How long ago was his last relationship? What's his mental state? Like all of these things I would ask before meeting someone, but you just happen to, you're in a vacation bubble mode. Right. So you can do it to have a good time, but I'd say, the challenge is if you like each other, if he really likes you, you're putting yourself, if you go out for cocktails, your boundaries lower, you might end up having sex together. It wouldn't be that,
it would just be coffee. I wouldn't do drink.
Have coffee, but you know what? Practice, then do it for simply practicing those tougher questions like I outlined in the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
You're very welcome. Can I send you off with a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug?
For sure. Thank you, Jonathan.
All right. Thanks, Samantha. Thanks for sharing. Everyone, Samantha was someone that I worked with, help her unpack her relationship, and she came to the conclusion that it didn't make sense to continue. All right, let's keep going here. Someone says, can you restore brain time in a workaholic man's mind? People that their libido is in their professional life oftentimes only want part-time relationships. Just be aware of that. They want relationships on their terms. I'm here to advocate a co-creative process where there is a mutual partnership with one another. And if someone's libido is in their professional life, that's probably not the case. So a couple people, Harlow said, what happened to Marie? May I ask why Marie and you broke up? What happened with Marie? All right, we'll wrap up on this note. So sadly, I reported a few weeks back that Marie and I have decided to transition our relationship from a romantic relationship to, we'll call it friendship, if you will. She wasn't happy living here in Southern California. But more importantly, during the time together, it really exposed her deeper childhood wounds and traumas. And by the way, we all have them. Her childhood wounds and traumas are very much garden variety for everyone else. But being in a relationship with someone like myself uncovered that there was a need to want to be with her family, particularly her cousins and her brothers and sisters who live in Florida. And living here wasn't going to satisfy that. Now, I explored the idea of moving there, but the truth is I'm very rooted here and I want to be near my support system. The hard part was that it was difficult for her. As much as she originally came in with the idea to build a life here, she had a hard time building a day in life here. And so while we had a great time together, we explored the world together. I got to travel. We did 3 trips twice to Mexican Riviera, went through the Panama Canal, did a bunch of other things together. We had a very fruitful relationship. I think this relationship was meant to break her open, to work on some of her wounds, and really get a sense of who she is and what she wants. She oftentimes molded herself in the man's life. She did what a lot of women do, is she molded herself or melded into a man's life, and she really never got a chance to get a sense of who she was as a person outside of being in a relationship. I had a propensity to believe I need someone to love me for me to feel good about myself. So each got a chance to heal deeper wounds for us. We got a chance to explore, healthy communication with one another. I really got a chance to step into clarity of what I want in a relationship. And I recognize now I want to be a husband. I really want that. However that looks, it doesn't have to be a legal marriage. It can be a spiritual marriage. I really want to show up truly in a partnership. And I got a chance to do this in this experience. See, unlike a lot of breakups are usually because there's something you don't like about the other person. I think Marie cares about me deeply and I care about her deeply. It was more about our individual sovereignty. And we're giving each other a chance to, I don't think she plans on dating for quite some time. I'm going to open myself up when we've kind of the logistics of this relationship unfolds. I'm going to open myself up for my life partner. I am holding space that a relationship can end and you can still believe in the abundance of there are an abundant amount of people that want to be life partners with each other. So I'm going to hold that space and I'll chronicle my journey along that way for everyone, because many people believe that you can only have chemistry with one person. You can only have this connect. Like she's the only person I'll ever have this connection with. No, she's not the only person. We have a gazillion soulmates out there. And some of those soulmates turn into life partners. And some of those soulmates came here to teach you a lesson, to open you up. And she is so grateful to me and I'm so grateful to her. We are doing a very conscious uncoupling. Why? Because we're both grown up to say, you know what, if it doesn't work for one person, it doesn't work for both. And that's okay. I respect her. I have a great deal of respect for her. And, could I have spotted some of these things sooner? You know what? It wasn't about, could I have spotted this? Yeah, I could say I could have spotted this, but I would have missed out on this beautiful experience. And she got me out of my comfort zone and she helped push me in areas that I needed pushing. So when you look at it from the place of what positive things did I learn about myself in this experience? This is what I said to Samantha. What positive things did I learn about myself in this experience? How did I heal from this experience? What was good and what am I most grateful for? When you're operating from a place of gratitude and abundance, the universe, God, whatever source out there, will begin to make you a magnetic attractor for what you want. If you're living in a state of fear, scarcity, anger, shame, judgment, bitterness, anger, which a lot of people do. A lot of people do. They'll just attract a lot of what they don't want. That's what will happen. So anyways, Harlow, Thene, and Carla, thanks for asking those questions. I hope I was able to answer to your satisfaction. Not that I needed your satisfaction. All right. All right, folks. I'm going to end on this note. Angel says, good morning. I'm so thrilled I made it online while you're doing a live. I think to myself every day, it's raining great men. It's raining great men. Jonathan, bear hugs to you. Sorry about Marie. Exactly. It's raining great women. It's raining great men. It's raining great women. It's raining great men. And what great simply means is good people with good hearts. Good people with good hearts. It's raining great men. It's raining great men and good people with good hearts. All right, I think this will be a great place to wrap up this live stream. Did you have value in it? If you did, post a comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Check out my groups and the links. Check out a discovery call with me. Check out my group called Midlife Love Mastery. Follow me on Instagram. Get all the goodies that I've listed down below. If you found value in this video, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, giving myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug of self-love. I'm going to reach into the, pit stains, reach in the camera and give you a hug of love if that's okay. I'm asking you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow. Give it or them a hug of love because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. I want to thank our Facebook group, Lindsay, Marcy, Harlow, Heidi, Kim, Steph, Hillary, Angels, Carla, Sin, Sinisa, Dolly, Jeannie, Honey Lou, Honey You. Everyone, thanks so much. Have a fab day. Take care. Bye now.